What is going on, everyone? AP over here at Run Pure Sports, bringing to you once again. We have the Thursday night showdown breakdown. We got an awesome one between the Bills and Dolphins. Should be an absolute banger. Ruby, I don't know if you were in chat earlier in Discord. I mean, it might give it away, my question to you, because we all think of these Thursday night games as slogfest, boring, crappy football. But I think we had 19 Thursday night football games last season. How many do you think went over 50 points?
I was not in the chat. If I had to guess, I would say 7 of the 19.
It was 11. The average score on Thursday night football games was 50.5 points. I would have never guessed that at all, but there were some absolute bangers. I mean, like the Saints-Rams went off. The Chargers-Raiders, like remember that game, 63-21. I mean, there were some absolute bangers on Thursday night. I think that's what we get tonight. I know I saw a lot of people betting or talking up the under and kind of this narrative Thursday. But maybe, just maybe, there is an advantage here for the offenses because there's a lot of these matchups too on these Thursday nights last season where you would have never guessed that they would have went over. Just teams that are not teams that typically score a lot of points. So I thought that was like Bears Commanders last year put up 60 points, like absolutely insane. So I think this is going to be an absolute banger of a game. But Rubio, what's going on? Let's bring you in. What's going on? How are you doing on this fine Thursday?
It's a fun one. I mean, when we look at the Bills, like I love you having this past optimal slate up. And the biggest thing that you just see is Josh Allen, especially in captain and stuff. And like, their philosophy on offense, since week 13 of last year, completely flipped with the offense coordinator change. Last game against the Arizona Cardinals, they were down 17-3 at the 2-minute warning in the first half. And yet you would have thought, in the old days, Josh Allen would have thrown that rock 40 times minimum. He only threw the ball 23 times, and that was in a trail script for the majority of the game. And what you're seeing from the Bills here is a very run first with Josh Allen being at the helm of that. He's basically the goal line back. I mean, he's almost like a running back in the way he plays now. Like they run the ball 40 times. He throws it 23. It's very interesting. And this kind of leaves us with a slate where you have very clear funnels on the Dolphins, and we don't know the status of A-Chain or, if he's going to play or not, which impacts the slate greatly. But you also kind of have a very clear funnel with the Bills, too. Only like 3 guys I can really imagine making a huge impact. I mean, Matt Collins last week was caught a touchdown and stuff, but really only 3 guys with real volume on both teams. So that should make for a pretty decent showdown tonight. It only takes 1 guy to get unique. Who did it last game? It was Alan Lazard. That's all you need.
Alan Lazard. Yeah, Big T and Wiley were both on Mr. Lazard. I was blown away. I sent out a tweet, and the guy, and I love this. I think Showdown DFS is one of the best forms of DFS right now. One of the guys that chopped for a milli. So first off, our friend, I forget the name now. I mean, he had that milli locked up, a solo milli shipper.
I know the guy you're talking about, Dennis something.
Dennis.
I saw that lineup too, and it was literally a 2v2 off the most chalk lineup possible. It still had Jordan Mason at the captain, but it left like 10K in salary. It was like Alan Lazard over Rodgers, and then could have been the kicker over whoever in that last utility.
Yeah,
it was crazy. But
the guys that split it, one of the guys, I think both of them ran 6 builds or under, and so I love to see that. Showdown, it's such a great format of DFS, and these prize pools are top heavy, but typically most nights we get a nice chop. And look, like JSU, our guy, he chopped on like Monday night or Sunday night for a tasty 10K. We love that. We love community wins, but we also got to celebrate when you got these guys that are building 1 to 6 lineups that go out there and chop 2 times or solo ship. I mean, I love to see that. Yeah, I'm typically getting spanked on nights like that, but I still love to see it. So I think tonight's slate is awesome. I wanted to bring up the Showdown Past Optimal page. You can go and find this over at Run Pure Sports. RPS 15% off. I wanted to highlight this. I love these spots where we get kind of a consistent optimal build that we see. Now, again, for the finance pros out there, past performance is not indicative of future results. Disclosure, all of you guys love that. But you typically see kind of a consistent identity from certain teams. We definitely see that here from the Bills. Josh Allen, captain optimal 4 games in a row. I forget. I think it's 9 out of 9 total times. I could be wrong, including the one game this year and then going back to last year. You also typically see a lot of salary used. So a lot of studs on our builds. So not a lot of salary on the table outside of, a 32-6, absolute mashing of the Jets. Obviously that's going to be a little bit different. So game script matters. But what you see is a lot of salary used. You also see a cheap player in your lineup to allow you to fit the Josh Allen captain. So you also, if we go down to the Dolphins page, same kind of formula, except for not Tua. Tua has, I don't think over the last 2 seasons, Tua has been optimal in the captain spot as a quarterback in any one of their games. It's kind of a mind-blowing stat. You typically don't see it, but it's usually one of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, or an opposing skill position player, wide receiver, running back, tight end, or quarterback, rushing quarterback. Look at Ravens, Lamar. Each time they've played the Bills, I think it's typically, more often than not, Josh Allen. So I do not include Week 18 in these past optimals because Week 18 is usually insane, not typically relevant. But the Bills played the Dolphins last season, Week 18. Josh Allen was captain optimal. So any kind of big picture thoughts before we dive into our builds with our partner, SaberSim, Rubio, just looking at the past optimals here between these two teams?
Yeah, we're definitely not going to captain Tua. I mean, that is very just astounding to see. It is something that it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, he's got a clear funnel. He's got 2 great wide receivers. He's got weapons at the running back position usually. But yeah, we're 100% not going to captain Tua. Not even like trembling in once into the captain spot. When I look at the Bills, though, no 5-1s either. No 5-1s tonight. I see a couple in the Dolphins range. I think it was like 3 to kind of end the year. But the Bills have a very narrow tree, and since they've kind of switched up to really just being a run-first team, you haven't seen a 5-1 yet, except for that Jets-Buffalo Bills game where I think that was on Black Friday. That one we can throw away. But no 5-1s tonight, no Tua captain, really heavy on Josh Allen captain. It makes me happy that the base build that I see there has Josh Allen and captain the most. And, yeah, Reggie Gillum, oh, my goodness. I can get on board with some 200 funds. I don't think we have it tonight, but
we have some cheapies that are going to be interesting. I mean, Mr. Mac Hollins, 58% target share. Last week, he's what? He's like 1,600 or something in the flex. Those cheapies are going to come into play with these teams specifically. I think we see points, so it's going to be really interesting. I'm with you. Like I get the makings of this build, and I know we dissed on Tua in the captain spot. He's been optimal to flex a lot, and that's just kind of – he's always an extension of his receivers. If his receivers go off, it's more likely that one of them is in the captain spot while he remains in the flex. It's just a function of what their offense is. So I'm fine with this build structure that we have in this space optimal. But, yeah, you got to find that right, sneaky, cheap punt. And the other thing I'm going to say as we dive into this is I wanted to say the HAN was – a lock to play tonight, but after the CMC stuff, we can't say that. Like, our show was kind of invalid after that news came out super late. Is what it is. We adjust, and that's why we had Wiley and JBC up to lock, helping us all out.
Kate Fallicky was even on there too.
Kate Fallick came on, got the winners. I mean, I sent that picture out. Our optimal hunters, and Mr. K Fallick, one of the best in the game at that. But Rubio, what are you seeing here with the base builds? Anything you like, anything you don't like, anything that just stands out? And I can switch over to the flex spot too if you want.
Yeah, I mean, it is nice to see their studs at the captain, right? We're definitely not going to do Tua, but it's still interesting to see him project very high, just on the base build because we're just doing projected scores. It's very interesting too when you just look at some of these punts, right? Not that I really want to do like Reggie Gillum or Durham Smythe. It's very interesting that they're hitting builds, and that's even with Jeff Wilson Jr., who is going to be one of the best value plays on the entire slate. It's even more Reggie Gilliam than I would have thought. 26% across 150 of the top projected teams with no variance. Mac Hollins, fun fact, has one of the best social media pages out there. Apparently, he just does a lot of home improvement stuff. So Matt Collins being optimal in week 1 for this team is very interesting. I could see taking a risk on some of these cheap pass catchers for the Bills. You're not looking for volume. You're looking for the touchdown like Matt Collins got last week. It's very surprising to see Keon Coleman, who did pretty well last week, 5,800, not hit a ton. Dalton Kincaid, not really hitting a ton. I think a lot of that just has to do with the volume. Like, if they're only going to throw the ball 25 times a game, it's going to be very hard for multiple pass catchers to be on the Bills in the winter. So, yeah, I think this kind of all makes sense. James Cook at 9K is a bit pricey, but you did see the running back split. What was he? 67% of the snaps, which is a lot higher than I would have thought for James Cook coming into the season. I thought Ray Davis might have had a larger role, but that wasn't the case. Jonnu Smith being 2,800 probably won't be chalk, but there's a guy you can kind of get different with. Khalil Shakir not appearing on here at all is also very surprising. But yeah, I mean, like you said, we can assume that A-Chain plays, but 90 minutes before lock, when those inactives hit, that's when that can just not matter. In the end all be all.
Yeah, I agree. This $200 punt, I guess we'll get into it when we do our scripted build. But man, I mean, of course, we're going to get a lot of them with a 4.1 projection. I use SaberSim's base projection, whatever they had, 10 minutes ago? That's basically what I used for running this base build. And look, like, if there's a guy that's going to that is going to get that type of production, I do think it makes quite a bit of sense. I don't think, like, some of these 5-1s I think are also interesting, just with how and more so on the Dolphins side, with how Josh Allen basically has to do everything himself. I could see many different types of builds where a 5-1 is viable. Obviously, the HA news is going to be really important. I also think the cheap options on the build side is going to be somewhat interesting. So I think the base build here gives us a nice idea of slate context. There's going to be a lot of really, really attractive builds out there. I think I feel comfortable with what I want to do at the captain spot. Then it just becomes kind of a mix and match game in multi-entry purposes in that flex spot. And if you isolate it like that, which is something I wish I would have done a better job at on that Monday night slate, it usually sets you up to be pretty good. Now, I take that back a little bit. I mean, did you have any Lazard captains? I guess I did not, so it would have mattered for me anyway.
Well, especially when Jordan Mason pops up, you didn't want to do too much Jordan Mason, because then you're just overexposing yourself to dupes in that sense, unless you're being super unique like that one Dennis had left over 11K, it felt, right? And if you were just doing a bunch of Jordan Mason captain, you were kind of exposing yourself to just a ton of dupes. And I mean, to be fair, Lazard did nothing for 3 quarters and then pops up on that second to last drive, or those last 3 drives for the Jets. I mean, it was funny. You never would have thought that a Jets captain would have been optimal midway through that game. It was really just the Jordan Mason show. And it even ended up being like Jake Moody being optimal and stuff too, where he just absolutely nuked at the kicker position. Like, I as much as we can love Josh Allen a captain today, you don't want to completely lose sight on maybe a cheap guy like that potentially breaking the slate at no ownership.
Yeah, and if you saw our guy Big T's tweet with SaberSim's, I believe it's the sim optimals and what they like. We did get a lot of Tua in there, and look, like Tua, he's cheap. I mean, Josh Allen 11K, Tua 9,400, and for Tua, the one thing with Tua that's going to be far different than Allen, and I think 98% of us understand this completely. It's not any secret out there. It's, you got the rushing upside, the touchdown upside on the ground from Josh. You don't get that from Tua. Tua is always going to be an extension of his receivers, mainly Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. So the rules around Tua are going to be far more important than Josh Allen. You're going to want one of, maybe 2 of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, one of the receivers, maybe a tight end there, or even Achan. The dude is an absolute stud, and obviously questionable right now. I think he plays. I think I'm going to run the script with the assumption that he plays. I don't know if you have an opinion on that before we dive into the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, what was the last thing that was posted? There was optimism that he's going to play.
He's going to practice. They're going to see how he does through warmups. That's usually a pretty positive sign, right?
Yeah, and the optimism word is the one that we can kind of use to I would assume he's playing. And you know what? If he's not playing, well, you got a bunch of shows up to lock, or I think we might have the Showdown King show tonight. I'm not sure, but the Discord will be popping just like it was with the Jordan Mason news when he was getting the start.
Yeah, and I mean the context and words are so important, and we always assume that we understand the context of every word that's used. I mean, Mason, yeah, did they probably know? Did Kyle Shanahan probably know? He probably did. I'm on that side. At the same time, let's just say they use wording to him like, hey, be ready to go.
Yep.
Like maybe it's Friday in practice. They're like, hey, be ready to go. Good chance you could be a starter. Not guaranteeing it, but like that, he could have been truthful with what he said. Yeah. Now, I think it was telling in the second interview that was out there with him. Obviously he got in the doghouse a little bit, got in trouble. It's just, I don't know, is what it is. We'll get that news, obviously, but I think he plays. Let's get into this, though. We have our projections here. So Run Pure Sports projections aren't up yet. Captain will be on those. I expect them to be live probably before the game, before our show is up. What's your thoughts here? Josh Allen, 22.65, in my opinion, feels a little light for me. And we got Tua at 18-1. What are we doing with the quarterbacks in this game?
Let's just bump up Allen a couple spots. I mean, if he's going to rush the ball like that, we just got to. It is very interesting, too, and I was just pulling up the stats. I would have never have told you that Buffalo, in terms of just yards given up per game, was a top 10 defense last year. So seeing that kind of is just a little bit shocking. I think we can bump Tua up a point, but for the sake of the Sims, too, we're going to X amount of cap. I know you said he's cheap, and he is popping up in some builds and stuff. Let's give him a small.
We're not going to X him out yet. We're not Xing out. We don't X out anyone yet. We'll do it we'll do it on the back end. We'll do it on the back end. We don't want to.
You know what? That's a good point. When we run the contest Sims, let's see how much he's hitting. Let's see the builds that he populates into. All right, fair enough.
I disagree with that initial project. Look, it's a first look projection. I'm sure it's going to get updated from Saber's point of view. But I mean, last 5 games. I mean, Allen, his floor is like 29. The last time he was under 22 was against Dallas, and just an absolute mashing of a game where he didn't have his stuff. That was on last December. But I mean, that was what, like 7-8 games ago? I just assuming that we see points here, I think we do. Josh Allen, we know he has to do everything. So I like the idea of bumping him up. We gave Tua. Are you fine with that? 18.5. Do we want to go 19?
No, I'm very good with 18.5, and yeah, I'm with you on Josh Allen 100%. Like 22 is just way too low. We just saw this Miami Dolphins team struggle a little bit with the Jaguars. Honestly, fortunate to get the win. What was it? Travis Etienne fumbling, and then they hit the 80-yard play. What a turn of events that was. What a two-play span where Tyreek caught a touchdown after the Jags looked like they were going to be in the end zone. I'm not a real believer in this Dolphins defense at the moment either. So I expect the Josh Allen show to continue today.
Yeah, look, that Jags Dolphins game was kind of just it was a weird game. I thought we could have seen a lot more points. It was a week 1. It had preseason vibes to it, something that we talked about a lot last week. It really could have went either way, like more points, less points. The opportunity was there, and I think that's the part that's important to note because we're going to see it tonight for sure, in my opinion. So I snuck in another half-point bump on Josh Allen, got him to 20-26. Look, I just feel far more comfortable with Allen at captain. Could it be different? It definitely could, but it's definitely going to be a safe route on the slate. Running backs, so Raheem Mostert already ruled out, obviously. Achane, questionable. We think he's going to play. If he doesn't play, Jeff Wilson is the guy. Look, Jeff Wilson, if we go back over the last 2 seasons, he's been seen in the captain as a captain optimal play more often than Tua. So obviously Jeff Wilson would probably be our guy. But what are we doing with the running backs tonight, Rubio?
Yeah, I mean, like we said, James Cook getting 67% of the snaps, around 14-point projection. I think that's actually a really fair projection on James Cook, right? And then Ty Johnson and Ray Davis. Ray Davis only getting 10% of the work was a little bit surprising, as I said before. But with the Dolphins, Achane took that first screen, about 38 yards. I am not really sold on him.
Don't
significant.
do it.
Well, here's my.
You don't, dude is a stud, Rubio. You're under on A-Chain?
Yes, I 100% agree. My problem is here, AP, is I think if he plays, I don't think it's a workhorse type load. I think it's very similar to what he has been getting. I don't think Mostert being out helps him at all. I just think that Mostert's work immediately goes to Jeff Wilson, and A-Chain's fine, but you're relying on big plays. And if he's going to come in at anywhere near 40%, I'd rather go under on it. I know he's been very good in the passing game over the first week. What he did last season was very effective too. They get him the ball in dangerous areas, but there's no world where I just see him getting an immediate bump in usage just based on Mostert being out. Because I think all those carries, all those touches go to Wilson, and a chance that some of those go to Jalen Wright. I just don't see A-Chain getting a direct bump because Mostert is out.
I mean, fair points. And the breakdown between snap counts last week, 52% A-Chain, 44% Mostert. I think most of us had it as a 50-50 time split. Mm-hmm. I still think 50% plus, and I mean, maybe more. But again, they have Jeff Wilson, a guy they know, a guy they trust.
And this is like a great.
We got to bump him up.
Like A-Chain is their wide receiver 3. Like based on the way they're using him, they're splitting him out wide and stuff. That's all good. And I'm definitely not going to hate on the fact that if you're playing A-Chain for the receiving upside, what he can do around the goal line too. If you think he's the guy who's around the goal line, I'm cool bumping him up. But I'm going to be very timid about it. I should say I'm very cautious because I really love Jeff Wilson, and there's going to be a question here. I know it's coming. Can you pair up Jeff Wilson and A-Chain? I think you absolutely can. I got an idea. I really want to, but I mean, A-Chain can get it done the pass game. They can both score a touchdown, that's for sure. Hell, you could even do a Tua fade where you fade Tua and play A-Chain and Wilson. So yeah, I'm definitely not going to hate on that at all.
I got an idea. What about this? Just to add in some rules. Yeah, no more than 2. We don't. I mean, look, these are value guys.
Oh, no more than 2. You scared me.
No.
He's button up.
Oh yeah, no more than 2. At least 2. No more than 2. No more than 2. Just to prevent us from getting. And again, it could. I don't see many scenarios where we would have those 3 guys in there, but I wouldn't hate A-Chan and Wilson. I wouldn't hate, but so this at least prevents us from getting these three, so we can get a little bit more aggressive on their projections because I like these values tonight. It prevents it from getting any 3 of them into our lineup. Do you think we're too bullish on Jeff Wilson? Are you fine with that?
I think we're too light.
Too light? What do you got him at? 10?
I think 50% of this now. Let me put it this way. We don't know with Jalen Wright. We don't know how big of a role he's going to get. We do know that Jeff Wilson, Mike McDaniel, loves him. I mean, he's going to get him some work. What was it? Rance kind of said sneaky for double digits. I think double digits. I think 10's perfect. I want to be buying on Jeff Wilson, and if A-Chain's out, if Wilson's the obvious captain, kind of similar to how Jordan Mason was. But if he's in, even then, I'm still going to project him very high and play him a ton.
A couple important things to note, and I wish I would have done this last week. I did not. I was not as bullish on Jordan Mason as I should have from a projection standpoint. And then the other thing that you have to do with that is you have to really drop the min salary down because he went off and there were passes where he was definitely going to be viable as the captain. And what happened was you're forced to leave salary basically on the table. It's a pricing
the quarterbacks. I mean, for fantasy purposes, Purdy did great as a quarterback in real life, but for fantasy purposes, they sucked. I mean, Purdy I think was optimal. Rodgers didn't quite make it there despite the long touchdown pass, but that's where you did it. You had Jordan Mason captain or Allen Lazard captain, and you left 10K. That's what won it.
So on the Bills side, James Cook 61% snaps last week to Ty Johnson's 23, Ray Davis 10%. What do you want to do with the projections on the Bills side?
I'd rather leave it. I think get Ray Davis ahead of Ty Johnson. I don't think that's going to be a trend that lasts. I think Ray Davis will definitely be the guy ahead of Ty Johnson. Maybe,
but we can't
too. But I don't love him either. I don't think there's a point in playing him at 3,600 and 2,200. They're more expensive than the Miami guys, in their respective roles.
Do you think this projection here is a mistake? I mean,
yeah, that's
4-1.
100% a mistake. Do you
Okay.
want to? The ownership
I mean,
is funny too, because I know they do field line and stuff like that. But here's Reggie Gilliam's stat line for all of 2023: 1 catch, 3 yards. That's it.
yeah,
And a forced fumble.
We don't want him out of our pool though. 1-1 is fine, right?
Yeah.
Or do you want to higher than 1-1? Or do you want him out of the pool?
Yeah, I think a real projection is like 0.25. I was shocking to see 4.1.
I want to keep these 200s in. I made that rule to where it filters it out if they're under 1 point.
Sounds
so I'm going to leave them in at 1.1. Has to be a mistake there unless I'm overlooking something. But let's get to the pass catchers. We'll include tight ends with our receivers. Obviously, a few interesting points here. We know the target tree. For one thing, we'll talk about this all season. Understanding target trees, very important, especially with DFS. We know it on the Miami side. It's Tyreek Hill, then it's Jalen Waddle. I mean, so those two guys. It's very, very clear, very, very defined. On the Bills side, it's very interesting now. It's kind of Chiefs vibes from last season. I mean, if we go to the snap counts, it was Keon Coleman, 73%, Matt Collins, 58%, our boy Tupac Shakir, 53%, which surprised me. Curtis Samuel, 27%, also surprising. And Mr. MVS, it's 21%. So the receiving room for the Bills is definitely the interesting point, especially for showdown purposes. Like, we don't want to neglect these guys. I also don't think that we want a full stack like all of these guys. And I can't forget about Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. Dalton Kincaid, 84% snaps. Dawson Knox, 58%. So both tight ends potentially very, very viable. I mean, this is 6 different players that are potentially viable tonight. Let's start with the Bills side. Rubio, what are you doing with the mess that we have with this receiving core?
You know that rule you made for the Dolphins running backs? I think
Should we do it?
That rule, and this is where we don't have to. I guess we don't have to. Let's see if it hits at all first.
Well, let's do a conservative rule. Like, let's just make sure we don't get. I mean, what would be like an absolute?
I don't want more than 2 personally, but
let's just say 3. No more than 3, just to be safe.
Let's just do 3 for now, and then we can kind of see what builds hit with 3. I don't even think we have to make that rule because I think it'll do that already. I would honestly throw in Cook in that if you were doing 3. I don't want to be overweight on Bills heavy stacks where it's like 4-2 Bills and you just got 3 wide receivers in there because again, they don't throw the ball. I mean, they just don't. At the end of the day, when you look at Josh Allen's stats, and this is my favorite tweet that I saw was it went over Josh Allen's performances against the Dolphins, his passing yards per game, and it was like an unreal. And it's like his over/under is 246. I think 7 of those 8 were under a different offensive coordinator. They have completely changed the way he plays. Only 23 pass attempts last week, right? If you look at excluding the playoffs, like you're just not seeing a very pass-happy team in the Bills. Like when they win games, when they're up, they're wanting to pound the ball 25, 30 times a game, and that's just not great for fantasy purposes. And these wide receivers are going to be the ones who are hurting most of the weeks. I think you're going to have random weeks where they go off and stuff, but Dalton Kincaid, I had very high hopes on being the guy. If they're not going to get on the ball, it's tough to pay $7,200 for. I think Keon Coleman's the one I'm kind of most bullish on. I've been very high on Khalil Shakir all offseason and stuff, but these projections seem fair. I think Coleman we can get up 1 point because I do think good things are going to happen to him because I think he's got enough talent to make things happen. Shakir the same way. But Samuel, what a disappointing week 1 from him. I think Dawson Knox is mainly used as a blocker, but I can't dismiss the projection because of how big of a red zone target he is. I don't think any of these guys are like wrong. I can see us like not really being high on him, and I really want it to be high coming in on Kincaid. But if they're not, do I throw week 1 away? Is my question. Do I throw week 1 away for Dalton Kincaid because 7,200 for a guy I think will lead the team in targets? That's the argument against it. I think Kincaid would be the one that I'd really want to be overweight on. The others can kind of hit. I'd be happy with Shakir or Coleman if I came in or over the field on.
This for me is like a spot that it's so like I don't have a lot of confidence in who it could be, and And on the flip side, would I be surprised if it was anyone? I mean, MVS, yeah, I would be surprised, but could he randomly catch like a random bomb? I mean, maybe. Like, I almost want to just make sure that the projections tell a story of we're not going to be completely overweight on any one of these guys. I want it kind of in line with like all of their value, like this value column. I almost want kind of all these guys kind of somewhat in line with each other. So that the optimizer isn't favoring one over the other, to make sure I get a nice like mix and match of them into our lineups. Like, does that make sense? Like, that's not like I don't really have a ton of like, I love what I saw from Matt Collins. I love his price, but or Matt Collins. But do I want to be like crazy overweight on him? I mean, no. I mean, he could bust, and if he busts, maybe it is Shakir. Like, I was high on Shakir coming into last week, so like I don't want to fully get rid of him. The whole flop lag. Our boy Snyder talks about it all the time. It's such a good Shakir flop lag spot. So is there anyone that we bump down, we bump up? Like, I think maybe it's like bump some of these guys up just so that they're relevant.
I think they're going to be relevant. I think they're going to be relevant in the sense of where like Dawson Knox is completely touchdown or bust. Curtis Samuel might be. I think Matt Collins is like, I think he's going to hit quite a bit. So I'm very curious to see how these like work out. But MVS, how big of a role can we really expect from him? I mean, coming in on a short week and stuff too. Or he was kind of banged up all training camp and stuff too. So I think his role, especially on a short week like this, could be a little bit limited. It's just a mess. I mean, it really is. And this is a good point from Brock too. Talking about Kincaid double covered and blanketed all week. If you also look at it last week too, I mean, when you only complete 12 passes as a team, the Jaguars, not a whole lot of guys are going to go off. I think Ingram only had 4 targets and 1 catch for 5 yards. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I mean, Miami's passing defense looked great last week. The run defense was kind of shredded, giving up about 5 yards a carry for the most part.
Yeah, I like that. All right, let's go to the Miami side. And again, I think this is going to be a little bit easier to break down. But what are we doing? Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I mean, we obviously want Tyreek Hill to have a big projection. Yeah. I don't want to get burned by him. And then what do we do with the scrubs here? Any interest in some of these cheapies on the Miami side?
It's interesting to me because when you look at 2024 stats real quick and who they targeted, here's what I'm going to do real quick for Miami, because I wanted to see who's getting these slot targets. And it's also worth noting, too, when I was looking up some of the Buffalo's 2023 stats and then coming into last week, too, one thing that remained is you want running backs who can catch against them. They give up a lot of backfield targets, a lot of backfield, yards through the air and stuff. And then what James Conner did on the first 2 catches of the game last week. So I definitely want that. But like, as far as like being out wide, they were pretty good against wide receivers and lined up out wide. So what I was wanting to do was I was wanting to see in week 1, where did their yards come from? Obviously, we saw Tyreek Hill house an 80-yarder from the wide position, but both Hill and Hill had 41 yards from the slot. Waddle only had 1. So I'll buy on Hill. It looks like, he had 6 targets in the slot. So that's something where the Bills are a little bit weaker against them being out wide. A-Chain had the 1 screen pass go for 39 yards from the slot too. But Waddle's fine where he's at. 14.06 is, honestly, I'd probably have him at 15. But I don't really want to buy him as much as I want to buy like a guy like Tyreek here at all.
I still think that, I mean, we were who was it? So I love the comments that JSU had just on attacking the Bills secondary. I mean, Kyler Murray missed a lot of wide open throws. Maybe just due to his height, who knows? But I just think it's such a good spot for both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So I'm over on both of them, which honestly makes me I should be over on Tua as well. But definitely Tyreek Hill. He's always the guy that I want to be pretty high on because he has that slate in any matchup, has that slate breaking ability. So I'm going to bump both these guys up. I don't have a good read on I like that. Thanks, Mango. I don't have a good read on these cheapies, though. I don't want to fully dismiss them. But do we just with these guys, do we X any of them out of the pool, or do we just give them a 1.1?
Let's give them a 1.1 for now. I think it's probably chosen a grant. 1.1. Maybe Mike McDaniel's got a package for him. Also, you completely overlooked that Mangoen with the most viral tweet since.
That was a great tweet.
What was it? Bobby Hare had the one about Jordan Poole. Can you see why Draymond punched him to Kuzma and stuff? But Mangoen,
5-3 and some attitude.
3 million impressions on his tweet yesterday about Kyler Murray. You got to give him credit for that one. That was a great tweet.
So Julian Hill, 59% snaps. Smythe, 42%. Jonnu Smith, 28%.
Wait, how much snaps did Julian Hill get?
59%. 42.
What?
That's what I'm seeing right here.
Oh, I'm buying. So you talk. Let's get
how many routes did he run though?
Let's give him above Reggie Gilliam. Can we take Gilliam out of the pool then, please?
Yeah, we could definitely do
guys
that.
Up a tad. If they're gonna get 28%, 58, 50, 50% snaps and stuff like that, buy them. Let's give 1.6 to those guys like Chosen and stuff. If they got 28% of the snaps for Robbie Chosen, I'll buy all day. 200. We need it.
All right. So at least they're up over that one guy. Barrios, Jonnu Smith. I mean, maybe bring Jonnu Smith down just a little bit.
They got to use him at some point. I think he is capable of a big play. I'd rather have him than Dawson Knox all day.
What about like this? I just think I want these two guys to be the clear guys and then kind of a mix and match game down here with these. You feel pretty good about that?
Yeah, very good.
Okay. Let's I like how that looks. So like if we bring up we have him just barely under Josh Allen, which I think is correct, but he's obviously the second highest projected guy that we have. Let's go to kickers and defenses and kind of round this out and then run our builds. All right, what are we doing? Tyler Bass, Jason Sanders, and both defenses here this week.
So after Jake Moody put 22 on our heads, I don't want to completely dismiss kickers. Jason Sanders, I mean, both these guys have a good leg, but Jason Sanders, I want ahead of Tyler Bass. I think Sanders is like one of the best kickers we have in the game right now. So I think getting him up, you lowered him, man.
Yeah, because I mean, all right, yeah, I'm a homer with the pass optimals, and I know that what we typically. So that game was a little bit different. You saw kickers defenses pop a lot more, and we're talking about the 49ers against the Jets. Not necessarily the case with these Bills on the Bills side. Not a lot of kickers, more defenses than kickers in the past optimal builds. Obviously, that could change. But the same goes for the Dolphins. You just see it. It's a lot of playmakers, a lot of skill position players for both sides. And the defense is somewhat viable, and I think that has to do with pricing. You typically see cheaper defenses in this matchup, which we get tonight. $3K for the Dolphins. I mean, for a defense, Rubio, that's pretty cheap. Or the Jets are what, 3,200? I ended up being too high on them, which was unfortunate.
5,200 were the Jets and 49ers.
Can we this projection on the Bills? We can't have don't you think these two teams should be more so in line versus I guess they are in line, but do you think we're too high?
I don't
on the Bills.
Too high. I mean, Josh Allen has shown that he'll give the ball away if he wants. That's
why I think we should the Dolphins defense should be higher than the Bills projection.
I agree.
If you were doing this, so let's split the difference. I'm under on the kickers. You're over. What would your projection? You think it's fine?
Yeah, I definitely think that's fine. I'm just if they go Jake Moody or Blake Ruffy on our teams, I will be upset, not because of the
on our ass
or anything like that. I just don't want to see kickers in the winter, man.
All right, let's do 20 max. We did the Millie, and what was the last one we did? A single entry?
Single entry, yeah.
Single entry. All right, we had our contest sims. Let's do something. Let's go back to our script. Let's bring our mid-salary down, just because I don't think it's going to matter too much. Too many. Let's go 3,500. All right, well, this is building. Let's talk through kind of the game script tonight and what you see going down. Who do you have winning, and what do you think the score is likely to be?
So I had to take coming into the season that I thought Bills games would go under to start because they're going to run the ball a ton and games are going to move pretty fast. And then they scored 62 points in week 1? 34-28 game, one of the highest scoring ones in week 1. And they did exactly what I thought they would do too, which they ran the ball a ton. So I think about 50 points in this one. The question is, though, when you just look at home field advantage and stuff, you look at what Mike Daniel does with the team early on in the season.
I like that.
That's kind of where I was going with this. Like, I think I'd rather have 4-2 Miami builds. I would hope that they would win this game about 28-24. I mean, that would be my hope. And I think that's the score I'm going to go with. Dolphins 28, Bills 24.
Dolphins 28, Bills 24. I like that. I think I already bet the Dolphins, so I better not say the Bills. All right, we have it sorted by the Millie Maker contest. Let's look at our captains first. So the rundown on the captains: Tyreek Hill 40%, Josh Allen 34%, and then Waddle, H.N., Wilson, Tua, Keon Coleman, Jalen Wright. What's your thoughts there? Nice, diversified. We don't have to use the min uniques as much anymore, right?
Correct. Yep. So if you actually go to hit that uniques to 2 real quick, just to show people now some of their changes where making it so where you don't really have to hit the uniques. You can see our captains hardly moved at all. And if you went to flex, it would probably hardly move at all too, because they're already diversifying that, I think, against your own lineups that you're using. So yeah, you look at it. There was hardly a ton of movement there. I know it looked like Jeff Wilson jumped a ton of stuff, but hardly anyone moved within 6 or 7%. So what they're doing, they're already kind of incorporating the uniques across this 150, make sure that your builds are diversified enough. And it's also interesting to me, we got a lot of guys high up, but this is the captain pool that I would want. We only get to in 2 builds where, I would almost exit at that point, but I want to see what those builds look like, AP. Where do they rank? Yeah, where do they rank in terms of, so it's 24th, and that one is a 5-1. You would hope that he throws one to Julian Hill. You would hope that maybe he threw one to Jeff Wilson and stuff, and Hill and Waddle can get there with yards. I mean, I don't want a 5-1 tonight, but if I did, I prefer Miami 5-1. And then, the Miami 5-1 again with Tua captain. So that would be kind of the path for it. The one build that we had at the very top, which was a 4-2 with Ty Johnson, that one would make more sense as a 5-1 with Jalen Wright, in my opinion. If you thought, A-Chain doesn't look good in warm-ups or something like that, where there was maybe news where he could be limited, I would throw Jalen Wright over Ty Johnson there, in a 5-1. But these builds make sense. I mean, look at Mac Hollins too, only being 1,600. I'd rather him than a guy like Ty Johnson in those type of builds too. This one right here, that 3-3 that's ranked 4th. That's a good team. That's a team that I could absolutely rock a little bit. You got Josh Allen with 2 pass catchers. Not that I really think that's a necessity, but maybe you think that Mac Hollins wasn't a fluke last week. I could rock with that a little bit. You got Tyreek Hill with, you could throw in A-Chain there or Waddle. That would make a lot of sense. And here's my thing too. I should have looked at the stats before then. A-Chain got a lot of snaps out wide too. He had 2 targets in an out wide alignment. You also look at it just in the slot. He had the one target too, but out of the backfield, he also had another 4 catches. He is the wide receiver 3, and maybe I shouldn't be discounting as much. And we do have a healthy projection on him because you made sure to keep him up there. But I might be a little more sold on A-Chain just of the possibility of getting there with just catches alone. And if they're going to utilize him like they did last week, that is very bullish for a site like DraftKings, where obviously it's full point PPR.
MVS got in there. I mean, and again, this is
you throw Mac Hollins in there over MVS, and that's a build that I would 100% entertain.
But what's happening here, though, is we're sorting by, obviously, the Sims using the Millie Maker settings and risk adjusted. And this is just from a, pure unique potential standpoint is going to
5% projected.
Who?
MVS. Yeah, 5%.
Yeah, MVS. And what's Hollins?
Mac Hollins. Let's see. You got to build Mac Hollins there.
Had to be higher. But
go to flex real quick and then check, because I'm actually really interested to see what Matt Collins are projecting in the field lineups for. I would guess around a dozen, 12% or so. Let's see. Well, that's exactly what we have him at. We have him at 12%.
He's projected at 11%. Yeah.
And those make sense. I mean, if you're not wanting a Buffalo running back, like James Cook or anything like that, I mean, that would make sense. But I think 4-2 Miami seems like the sweet spot for me tonight.
I think if you're going Waddle or Tyreek at captain, you really want then like the kind of like build formula seems pretty easy. It's you want Allen in there mostly, at least I do, and then you want Tua. Like Tua's pricey. He's just too cheap. Like I get why the initial sims that Big T ran probably resulted in a lot of Tua captains. He's cheap, 9,400 for a quarterback. That's a huge discount off of Allen. I still like Allen over him with the rushing upside, but he's cheap. I think there's a good chance, a good likelihood that he's in the flex tonight. And if you're running Tyreek captain, Jalen Waddle captain, you probably want Tua in that flex. And then I want 100% exposure overall between captain and flex to Josh Allen. Like he, for me, is kind of that free square. I just don't like if we have points and if I don't like have him, then I should be hammering the under of this game. But that build type right there, then it comes down to what combinations are left over, and it's a mixing and matching game. So I really like that. I think that's an interesting rule to where you have Tua handcuffed to Waddle or Tyreek if they're in your captain builds, and you can easily do that with a group setting. So an if it's an if rule, right? If Tyreek is captain, then Tua has to be in there as in the flex.
It would be a very interesting thing to look at. I mean, if for someone who ever had time and stuff and was looking for ways to get unique, like how many people pair up Waddle or Hill if they're in the captain with Tua, right? Like let's say that number was 90% of the time, like then you could start looking at leverage. But if it's lower than that, like yeah, you're right. It's almost worth just putting Tua in there. 9,400. When you're getting that stack, it's just a disgusting. Even with Tyreek in the captain, like you're getting at 26K, which is still a steal.
Let's go to our single entry builds, and we don't need 150 for this. Let's just look at the top 10 builds sorted by this. So I mean, this makes if I thought of if I'm running a single entry lineup, I'm usually clicking Josh Allen first. Second would be Tyreek Hill. And those two, honestly, are probably the only ones that I would consider, unless Achane got ruled out, then Jeff Wilson would come into consideration. Is that kind of how you have it as well?
If Achane, I think it's just worth going over this. If Achane got ruled out, I would be very hard-pressed to not go Jeff Wilson captain. And if I did, because it's the same thing with Jordan Mason, like I would go a stud at captain. I'd probably play Jalen Wright with Jeff Wilson. I think they would be that effective.
Okay. Good points, because the difference here is in that game that we're referencing, the Jets 49ers, we didn't have a Josh Allen there. We had Brock Purdy. Can Purdy get there? Yeah, he can, but he's much more of a game manager type. I know people frown on that.
Wasn't a clear captain in that game until Jordan Mason came out, because I didn't really love any of my lineups before Jordan Mason. The whole news happened that he was going to get the start. And when you looked at that slate, just like individually different from this one, like there was a path to failure for every single player. And look at the 49ers. Kittle failed. Ayuk failed. Garrett Wilson failed for the Jets. Aaron Rodgers failed. So many duds at the top. You're not going to see that today. Tyreek Hill, Josh Allen, Jalen Waddle, Achane, Tua. I mean, you got studs that you want. And this is why it makes sense. Like if you went Josh Allen, let's say Achane did get rolled out and stuff, those builds with Jeff Wilson and Jalen Wright are going to fit like a glove, man. And that's the path that I'd probably prefer for single entry in that scenario. And in this case, though, currently, like I think it would be still Josh Allen at the top, but Jeff Wilson would be kind of like my two-man core for single entry. And then when you saw it, like you had Tyreek Hill, Tua, and Jeff Wilson, and then you're kind of left with punt. It would make sense. Like I'm not really high on James Cook, but that'd be a way to do it where like Josh Allen can easily throw into James Cook. Like the Miami Dolphins do kind of leak targets to the backfield. They were really good against the run last year, but not great in week one. So I could see a build like that for single entry. But like that one makes sense for single entry too. Julian Hill, if you're going to get 58% of the snaps, take all the volume from Miami almost, except for H.
I would almost want like Tyreek Hill in single entry. I would want a receiver with Josh Allen. I know it's a little, I would want one piece on the build side, at least with him. We know there's a lot of questions around which receiver is the guy. Maybe you look at Kincaid. We know that's one of his favorite targets, bounce back spot. I went James Cook just because we know he's going to get production. We know what they want to do. They want to run the ball. 19 rush attempts last week. So like he felt like the nice piece over a Waddle. And so you're a little bit more diversified there. And I'm talking single entry purposes. And then I would look to replace not Jeff Wilson, but maybe Hill if I could, is kind of what I would consider in a single entry format. I'm really surprised by all of maybe not so much surprised just looking at the projections. We talked about the target tree more defined on Miami side. Maybe if you want to get unique with how many 5-1s we're seeing, like maybe you run this, but you X out the 5-1s. Is that something?
Can we do that real quick? Just X them out for this purpose, since we're getting so many.
Let's do it
for single entry. So if you go to stack exposure, and then
they're all 5-1s.
yeah, that's why.
That's insane.
Like,
that's absolutely insane. That is
well. It makes sense for single entry because we just talked about it with the Bills. Like outside of Josh Allen, good luck predicting who's going to get all that work. I mean, who knows? Dalton Kincaid could have a big game if he's going to line up in the slot a lot of the time. Outside of that, I don't have any confidence. James Cook would be the one you would.
I don't hate this right here. We have correlation. Maybe if HN was a good, like full go, we replace him here. But we know these guys are going to get targets. We know and can they both go off in the same game? Yes, they can. Can we attack the Bills secondary? Yes, we can. So
that showdown pass optimal that you had, can we go back to that real fast? Yeah. And I want to see how often Hill and Waddle both hit in the flex. So let's see. You got that one. There you go. Last one they did last week. That was a 5-1. That makes sense. Who was the one for the Jaguars?
It was the rookie, Brian Thomas Jr.
That makes sense. He got the touchdown there.
Yeah, he looks like a stud, by the way.
And then you look at it: Waddle, no Hill, Hill with no Waddle, Hill with Waddle on the 5-1 there. It's not. It
can definitely, but it can happen. It's actually. Yeah. This is optimal. It's optimal only, which honestly, it's a pretty high rate. And is there any without Tua? Is what I'm interested in.
That one,
and just this one, right?
Yeah, just that one right there.
Yeah, Mostert over. And I got it. The one thing too is going back and looking at what Tua's price was. I think would be important as well. Yeah. But I think here's another one. Waddle, Tyree. Yep. It happens more often than you think. It's kind of wild, and that just is indicative of their target tree, very defined. We talk about it. We talked about it with the Rams, that Rams showdown slate as well. So I like those spots where you kind of have where where the targets are going. In NBA terms, Rubio usage, we call it usage, offensive usage rate. Like we know where the production, or we have a somewhat of an idea of where the production is going to come from. I love spots like that, which is what we have tonight. So
that 5-1 with Hill captain that you had up there, where that makes a ton of sense here, and it might make a lot of sense for single entry. I had Hill captain, but if you just threw Josh Allen in there, like I guess for 5-1s, 5-1 is firmly in play, but for large field stuff, I don't think I would do it.
This one's interesting too. A cheap captain, and it just jams in all the studs. Josh Allen
may or may not have built that one or yesterday when I thought A-Chain would be out.
Oh, you may. Yeah, this would be very popular if that happens as well.
That would be the cash build almost too.
I like this. I like this a lot more if A-Chan is ruled in. And then maybe it's like maybe it is a true 50-50 time split. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that also Keon Coleman got 5 targets last week up to 23, so it was a decent target percentage. I think 22% or whatever. Like that would make sense, and you don't even have to go Keon Coleman there. You could leave salary if you're wanting to go a little bit more unique. You go a kicker over him or a defense over him or something stupid like that.
I love this build right here.
Oh,
This is my
man.
build.
Yeah.
But if I wanted to isolate or change just a little bit, what I would consider is no, maybe we can't put James Cook in there. Can we? Can't, right? Oh, not enough. Okay.
600.
We'll leave it be. Waddle's great.
You're 100 off of Cook there in that lineup.
I know our guy K Fallick likes Jalen Waddle as well. So I like this build though. I think maybe it's a little safe, but I think it checks a lot of boxes for me. Bounce back spot for Shakir. We got the cheap running back, 2 stud receivers, our stud up top, and a kicker. I mean, it feels like a really good build. This one too. I don't know so I usually run 35 builds on these slates right now, just early on in the season, getting a groove for everything with 35 builds. And I think this is a good strategy for, kind of like the medium bankroll players out there. You don't always have to run 150 if your bankroll doesn't, allow for it. 35 builds. I'm really considering just like isolating my captains to Josh Allen and Tyreek Hill in those 35 so that I can get enough mix and match combinations in the flex as possible. Is that something you ever do or would consider, Rubio? Or
100%. I mean, if the Sims tell me something's like in the top 20 or top 10, I should say, if you're running on 20 builds and you see like 8 chains in the top 10 of that, right? I would entertain it. But if they're like 19th or 20th, and there's RAROI, I would almost just say, you know what, I'm going to replace that with a Josh Allen captain or something where I want to at least have a little bit more control. I know that I trust SaberSim a ton, but I definitely want to, value my own takes a little bit more too. And I think it's worthwhile getting these studs in at captain as much as you can, especially if you're running limited builds.
Yeah, I agree. My take on tonight's game, obviously we got to polish this up. Rubio, we'll finish with you giving the breakdown of the content today, but I got the Dolphins winning. I think we're going to see a lot of points. I'm going to go I don't know, maybe it's too fresh in my mind looking at what we saw last year, but I think the Dolphins put up 30. I think they hang 30 plus on this Bills defense. I think the Bills, so 31-24 is what I'm going to say. And I want all the skill position players in that captain spot. I don't know what I'm going to do with Tua. I think I'd rather have Allen at that point. But as far as my favorite, most important player, I want to bet on Shakir bouncing back. So he's going to be a receiver that I'm over on. Did you have a key player that is going to be very important for you tonight, Rubio?
Jeff Wilson's going to be my most important, but I don't want to. He's probably going to get a lot of ownership and stuff. I would say in terms of leverage, I do expect to be overweight in Dalton Kincaid. I kind of agree with what Deegs is saying too. We also had the comment from Brock earlier. Kincaid's going to line up a lot in the slot, and Dawson Knox might line up at tight end a lot of the time. But what that does is it frees up Kincaid to kind of go against some linebackers, even some corners too that are a little bit too small. I thought Kincaid would be primed for a huge year. Had a bad week 1. All that does is lower the ownership. I want to be early. I don't ever want to be late on a guy with a ton of talent. And I think Kincaid had a potential and still does to be tight end number 1 by the end of the season in terms of points per game. So Kincaid would be my leverage play that I'm going to be very high on and hope that a lot of people kind of gravitate toward, the cheaper wide receivers.
Week 18 last year. Pretty big game against Miami, 15.4 DraftKings points. So he did. I'm trying to see if he absolutely broke a slate any week. I don't think he did.
It was when Dawson Knox was out for a small period of time last year, and then you saw Kincaid really start to
get a stretch. It was Patriots to the Broncos. He had a stretch where he put up no less than 15.5 points per game. Yeah, but still, it's tough. It's tough for me to get to a Bills captain just because there's so many different options. But we know the main option is going to be Allen, and we know what he does around in the red zone. We just absolutely know that, and that's my hesitation with James Cook and some of the running backs on his side. It's like you're in the red zone. It's a prime opportunity for your running back to get a touchdown. And what happens? Superman Josh Allen runs it in from the 18. So that's always the risk there. Rubio, give us a rundown of the rest of the content that we have over here at Rumpier Sport today.
Yeah, for today, you got the print factory that is fresh off JSU. winning about 10K on Sunday Night Football, I believe it was there, with Big T as well. They were both high on Lazard a decent bit. I know they bet the anytime touchdown on Alan Lazard, which was plus 650. They do some bets over there. And it's probably a better sense of what you'll be able to bet, because I just looked at some of my favorite things to look at. I was like looking at props. They got 0 Dolphins, A-Chain, and running back props posted right now. The sports books were burned so bad by Jordan Mason. We're not going to get that for a few weeks. They're not going to post anyone who's questionable. Yeah. And I really wanted to see A-Chain's passing props, and perhaps they'll be able to get that on the Print Factory. If you guys are new or haven't seen the new changes that Run Pure Sports content, what you're seeing here is that if you went to the site, you got an entire Big T player pool. It's your classic. Then you have a 3-max strat with JSU, Mangone, and K-Falic with their own breakdowns of the slate. You also have the playbook, which also has rankings for each player on the entire slate, as well as statistics from the season and last season, where these teams are vulnerable and where are they, exploited at. Like if you looked at the Bills last year, I made a note. You want running backs who can catch against them. I mean, they conceded a lot of yards to guys out of the backfield, and A-Chain kind of fits that bill a little bit. So I might have sounded a little bit off of him, but I'm back, AP. If he's active, I'll probably be hitting his back on reception props up a little bit more. Then you also have the Pass Optimals page that you always keep up with, and that one is very good to have up, like you can see there. Josh Allen, 4 for 4 in his last 4.
I mean, even if I love this stuff so much. Now, again, it's not going to give you a lot. For me, what it helps me do is just kind of identify, do we see any trends? Are there any, is there kind of, does this team have an identity? How does the target tree look out? Is what we're seeing in the projections, does it line up with what we've seen in the past? It helps me get, from like a macro standpoint, kind of mold my research or start my research. So even if no one looked at this, I'd probably still do it just because I use it myself. But on that note, Rubio, good luck everyone out there tonight. Millie Maker up top. I don't think we see a solo chipper unless something crazy happens. And that would be A-Chain getting ruled out, just because there's so many weird builds that can happen that when you're only using an optimizer, sometimes it can be tough to see. Assuming everyone plays, I think we see, I'm gonna say a 15 to 20 person chop up top, which I don't think anyone would be complaining about. That would obviously be a very, very nice payday for all of us. Hopefully it's someone in the Run Pure Sports community. But for Rubio Dimes, I'm AP. Good luck to all of you out there. And as always, Run Pure.